Hello, my name is Graham Hughes, and this is The Resistance. And so it's come to pass. As predicted, the Tories have taken a landslide victory in this absolutely unnecessary, unwanted and unneeded general election. So what now? Well, we're going to leave the European Union. We're going to leave. Scotland's going to leave. There have now been, for the first time in history, more loyalist, more nationalist MPs returned in Northern Ireland than Unionists, which triggers pretty much a border poll as mandated by the Good Friday Agreement. So a united Ireland isn't too far away. By the time we have our next election, perhaps in 2024, it could very well be the election for England and Wales, or Wangland, as I like to call it. So, how did we get here? Well, it's a long story that dates back to the Glorious Revolution of 1688, but we're not going to go back that far. Let's just go back to 2015, September 2015, when I voted for Andy Burnham to become leader of Labour. But unfortunately, Andy didn't win. Instead, that post went to a guy called Jeremy Corbyn, privately educated, millionaire, career politician, Jeremy Corbyn. If you ever get a chance to watch the movie Being There with Peter Sellers, it's a 1979 movie about a very simple man called Chance Gardner, I think, who is a gardener by chance. And he becomes president of the United States because he just says things about the garden and everyone thinks it's a metaphor for something and he's really profound when he's actually not. In my estimation, Corbyn's like an evil version of Chance Gardner. Corbyn is someone who came in to power in Labour and decided to reshape Labour in his own image. Now, alarm bells should have really started going off for most Labour supporters, and I was a Labour member at the time, during the 2016 EU referendum, in which a week before the actual poll, half of all Labour voters weren't sure whether Labour was for or against Brexit. That's pretty damning. That is awful. That is not leadership. The people who are voting in something don't even know what you stand for because you won't make it clear. And then we fast forward to the day after the referendum when Jeremy Corbyn called for Article 50 to be enacted immediately. Wow. Okay. Are we not going to consult anyone about this because it's a 2-year time period and there's a lot of things? No, we've got to do it immediately. So much so that in January 2017, he put in a 3-line whip, just to explain the whip system to people who might not be au fait with the weird political arcane systems in the UK. A 1-line whip is, if you're in town, please vote for us. If a 2-line whip is, please get to London and vote for us. If you don't, we won't buy you ice cream. A 3-line whip is, get your arse down to London, vote on this thing, it's dead important. If you don't vote for it, we're going to withdraw your parliamentary privileges and we might even withdraw the whip, which means that you're not part of the party anymore. And so when it comes round to election time, you stand absolutely no chance of being elected and therefore you lose your job. That's what you do, you lose your job. So, not wanting to lose the whip, a lot of Labour MPs voted with the Conservatives, with Jacob Rees-Mogg, with the ERG, to enact Article 50 with no amendments, no provisos, no safeguards, nothing to stop the Tories doing whatever the hell it was that they wanted to do, which was to basically pull us out the single market, end freedom of movement, and pull us out pull us out of the customs union, which is a hard Brexit. I mean, that's a crazy hard Brexit. That is the most damaging economically Brexit can get without it actually being a no deal. It's pretty damning. So then the Remain campaign fires up. And all over the country, people join these groups, Liverpool for Europe, Manchester for Europe, and we start having these marches to say, hey, we want to stay in the EU. We don't want to leave. And I was the MC at the People's March for Europe back in 2017 in September. And for the first time, I think, in political history, we had representatives of Labour, Conservatives, Lib Dems, Plaid Cymru, the SNPs and the Greens, all on the same stage, all singing from the same hymn sheet, saying Brexit is a really, really bad idea. We shouldn't be doing this. And we were ignored. We were ignored by Jeremy Corbyn at a level that was just absolutely... it's not just gaslighting. It's this thing of like, if you're in an abusive relationship, the other person makes you feel like you're not worthy. You somehow, you don't matter. You don't count. They're not going to come with you to your friend's wedding. They're not going to be seen out in public with you because they've got to let you know just how little you matter to them. And anyone who criticised Jeremy Corbyn and his leadership style and his policies and his sitting on the fence about Brexit was met with the words, why don't you fuck off and join the Tories? Well, if you say that to enough people, they might actually do that. Although interestingly, in this election that's just happened, only another 300,000 people voted Conservative than they did last time. But Labour lost 2.5 million votes. That is catastrophic. And why did they lose those votes? Labour will tell you it's because of Brexit. The Conservatives will tell you because it's Brexit. Both of them will join up and tell you that it's because of us thick northern monkeys who want Brexit more than life itself. But the exit polls tell something different. People were asked why they weren't voting Labour this time. And they said because of Jeremy Corbyn. Over 40% said because of Jeremy Corbyn. Only 18% said because of the Brexit stance. So there you go. And also the Conservatives lost votes from Tory Remainers who said, I'm not going to vote for this party. And they voted for the Lib Dems or someone else. The Lib Dems got 1 million more votes in this election. But it cannot be seen as being blameless in this whole debacle because Joe Swinson should not have helped the Tories get this election in the first place. They had the Tories in a box. And that brings us round to this year, okay? So obviously it's December now. January 2019, Theresa May puts her withdrawal agreement that she's negotiated with the EU before Parliament. And the ERG says, this isn't Brexity enough. We want it to be more Brexity. In order to get that bill through the House, if the Labour lot had said, hey, hang on, I'll tell you what, we'll vote for your bill, love, but, and it's a big but, you are going to have to add a people's vote to it. That's right, a final say, a referendum, a ratification referendum. And it'll be Theresa May's deal or remain. Jeremy Corbyn didn't want that. The previous March, he had actually kicked Owen Smith off the front bench, off the shadow front bench, for suggesting that Labour should join the calls for a people's vote. And then the Lib Dems put 17 votes, 17 amendments into bills throughout the year. And Labour either abstained or voted each and every single one of them down because Jeremy Corbyn told them to. Brexit could have been over this summer. Had Jeremy Corbyn done that and said, yeah, Theresa, we will go along with your deal, but we will have to have a referendum on it, then we would have had the chance to have a say on it. All the Remainers would have voted to remain. And a lot of the people who were gung-ho for Brexit will say this isn't Brexity enough because they've been told to say that by Farage and the ERG and all that lot. And so it wouldn't have got through and we would have remained in the EU. But we didn't. And then over the summer, Boris Johnson decided to sack 21 of his MPs because they voted against him on a bill. Effectively he removed the whip from 21 of his MPs, which left him with a minority party. He had a minority. What a great time to take him down. What they could have done at that point is called a no confidence motion in the government, then they have 2 weeks to form what's called a Government of National Unity, a GNU. And that could have been done. The Lib Dems were up for it. The SNP was up for it. All the little independents were like, yeah, why not? That sounds great. A lot of Tory Remainers were up for it. The only person who wasn't up for it was Jeremy Corbyn. Why was he not up for it? Because he wanted to be the leader of it. This is a man with a -60 approval rating. But apparently he had to be the leader of this interim government that could have brought in a referendum to decide whether he wanted the Tory deal on Brexit or whether he wanted to remain. And he decided not to take it. And then that brings us to November, when they had Boris Johnson in a box. He kept losing in the House of Commons because he didn't have a majority. But yet 19 Labour MPs voted through Boris Johnson's shitty deal with the EU, the withdrawal agreement, which separates Northern Ireland off from the rest of us. And did Jeremy Corbyn discipline them? No. Owen Smith got sacked from the front bench. I mean, Alistair Campbell was kicked out of the country for voting the Lib Dems in the EU elections this year. But 19 of Labour MPs go through the division lobby with the Conservatives for a very damaging Tory Brexit, and they're just allowed to do it. Great, because, you know, can't criticise Mr. Corbyn, because if you do, you're bad. You're a Tory. You're a yellow Tory. Why don't you just join the Tories, eh? And so Jo Swinson, in a moment of absolute lunacy, decides that she's going to back a simple vote to have a general election. Even though the Lib Dems don't stand a cat and hell's chance of winning that many more seats. In the end, they actually lost 1 or 2 or something. And Labour were going into an election with a leader, as I kept going on about, with a -60 approval rating. What do you think was going to happen? Well, it was going to be a Tory landslide. It was really the only thing that could possibly happen, and it did. And I got loads of shit because I should have told people to vote tactically, but actually, the places where people did vote tactically, it made little difference. And the places where Labour should have stood aside and allowed the Lib Dem to beat the Conservatives, Labour didn't stand aside. Because Labour has to put a candidate in every single constituency. It has to. It's part of its constitution. And so here we are. We've got Boris Johnson's far-right Tories in power for the next 5 years. We're leaving Europe. The UK is going to break up. And the NHS is going to move to an insurance system. It's going to become privatised. It's going to be expensive to get ill. You are going to feel bad and you're going to think, shall I go to the doctor? And you'll think, no, because it's going to cost me too much money. And it might not be anything. Hopefully it's nothing. Then you find out it's cancer. Then you go bankrupt, which is what happens in America. That's going to happen here. The future is not bright. The future is absolutely terrible. And I lay the blame for all of this on Jeremy Corbyn, the man who had ample opportunities to do something about it, to stop the Tories, to beat the Tories, and chose not to take it. He had the opportunity to stand down as leader and have someone electable in. Remember that piece that kept going around and go, oh, you think Jeremy Corbyn's unelectable? You've been brainwashed. Guys, Labour got 14.1% of the vote in the EU elections. And someone said, yeah, but the Conservatives got less than that. Yeah, and the Conservatives changed their leader to someone who, unfortunately, people would want to go for a pint down the pub with. A man who can actually tell a joke. Have you ever heard Corbyn tell a joke? Have you ever heard him laugh? I haven't. I just find him absolutely devoid of personality. I don't know how he rose to the position that he did. And all I can think is perhaps he's actually working for the Tories and the Kremlin, for that matter. I don't know. The point being that he is now put us in this situation where the Tories have a 80-seat majority. Absolute landslide win. It's the worst election defeat for Labour since 1935. And so here we are thinking, oh my God, this couldn't get any worse, could it? Oh yeah, hang on. No, it could get a bit worse. How about Mr. Corbyn decides not to stand down until he gets Brexit done? So that's what he's doing. He said he's going to stand down in April, maybe. April. By then, we're out of the EU because the extension period only lasted till the end of January, and they're going to rush the withdrawal agreement through the House of Commons because the Tory lot have got a thumping majority. And he's going to stay there like a bad smell. So if you look in the description of this video, there is a link to a change.org petition that I've set up to say Corbyn should leave immediately. And if you love Labour, if you love this country, if you love having a free NHS, please sign it, because we need to get rid of this cantankerous old barnacle and get somebody in to lead Labour and to encourage people to actually want to vote Labour instead of saying, oh, well, okay, I don't want Boris Johnson to get in, so I will vote Labour because that was the best way to stop that from happening. That's not a reason to vote something. It's just negative voting. We want someone who gives a positive message and a positive vibe. And yeah, keep your same manifesto. The manifesto was fine. It was okay. I didn't have a huge problem with it. I don't know anyone who did. No one talked about it. If you ask the people coming out of the polling booths after they voted and said, why didn't you vote Labour this time? Hardly any of them said it was because of the manifesto. Nearly half of them said it was because of Jeremy Corbyn. Okay, so before I want to just wrap up this video, please do sign the petition. I want to say, what next? What next? Well, as I've been saying for a little while now, Remain is over. And so we have to start a new campaign, the campaign to rejoin the European Union. And the campaign starts now. We already have over 160 different groups around the country, pro-EU groups. They don't need to stop being pro-EU just because we're not part of the EU anymore. There's plenty of pro-EU people in Georgia and Ukraine and Croatia, Croatia's part of the EU now, Serbia, who want to join the EU. So let's just join their number. Let's just say, hey, okay, the Eurosceptics after the 1975 referendum, they didn't say, oh, well, that's it forever now. We can't do anything about it. They kept on campaigning to and agitating to get a referendum to leave the EU, which they got after 40 years. So if it takes 40 years, it takes 40 years. I don't think it'll take that long because leaving the EU is a terrible idea, and I hope that I've stressed that enough in the videos that I've made on my YouTube channel and the comments I've made on Twitter at Every Country and on Facebook, where I like getting into little tiffs with all kinds of people who, for one reason or another, don't believe the fact that Corbyn is box office poison and he needs to go. You see, the thing is this, we have 1 million activists, 1 million pro-EU activists. What's an activist? An activist is someone who is prepared to get off their arse, travel to London and march on the streets to stay in the EU. That's 1 million people. That is the biggest campaign group in the country. It's one of the biggest in the world. That is not to be sniffed at. Now, if we get a Labour leader who is full-throated pro-EU, they can take the Tories to task over the debacle that is going to be the next year of life in the United Kingdom, the soon-to-be dead United Kingdom, when we lower the Union flag for the last time, because it won't be our flag anymore, because it's got the flag of Ireland on it and the flag of Scotland, and they will not be part of our country. We need a leader of Labour who is behind us, because if we can unlock that, then we unlock the unions. We get the unions, we get farming, we get industry. We get more power than the Remain camps ever known, because we would have the power to actually form a general strike, which would bring this Conservative government, this joke Conservative government, to its knees. And you know I'm right. So I want you to keep campaigning, keep the aspidistra flying. We will rejoin the EU one day. We will, because leaving it is such a terrible idea, and that's going to become abundantly clear. But we need someone as leader of Labour, pointing that out. So please, please, please go down to the description below and click on the link or tap on the link and sign up to the petition that Corbyn should leave immediately. Put Margaret Beckett in charge or someone for a bit and then find a new leader. Hopefully it's someone sensible like Jess Phillips or Keir Starmer. Fingers crossed. That means that a lot of us Remainers who have felt very politically homeless for the last few years can actually find a home again in British politics. And wouldn't that be nice? So until next time, here's to the EU. Good night.